A major shift in the war against Hamas. Israel has pulled out a key division from southern Gaza. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that victory is a step away.
Yesterday marked 6 months since the October 7th Hamas invasion. Hostage families gathered together in Jerusalem and Washington, D.C. to demand the release of their loved ones. CBN's Chris Mitchell has more.
Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says the pullout is a sign that Hamas is severely weakened as a fighting force.
Hamas ceased to function as a military organization throughout the Gaza Strip.
But within an hour, Hamas terrorists were firing rockets at 7 Israeli communities from the area the IDF troops had just left.
On the tactical level, what you can read into it is that the IDF is pulling out troops in order to get them some rest and time to reorganize in order to be prepared for the next stage of missions. That's one way of looking at it.
Jonathan Conricus, a former IDF spokesman and a lieutenant colonel in the reserves, says that next stage of mission would be an invasion of Rafah. He also says the move can be seen as a result of American pressure.
There was a few days ago an important and reportedly heated conversation between the president and the prime minister, and demands were made, and you could think that what Israel is doing now is an implementation of those demands.
Conricus says the IDF is also preparing for a greater conflict with Hezbollah.
Time will have to tell, and we will have to wait which one of the options it was, but it could be either one or a combination of all.
Still, as fighting reaches the 6-month mark, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sees the elimination of Hamas just ahead.
We're marking today 6 months of war. We're one step away from victory.
Netanyahu and Gallant insist on an invasion of Rafah, where Hamas's last intact battalions are holding up. As it has for weeks, the White House disagrees.
All I can do is say what I said before. We don't support a major ground operation in Rafah. That has not changed. And we're looking forward to having conversations with the Israelis about alternatives to those kinds of operations.
Some families of hostages held in Gaza mark the 6-month anniversary of their captivity at demonstrations in Washington and Jerusalem. Hostage mother Rachel Goldberg-Poland told CBS Face the Nation she's in D.C. to find what more can be done to free the hostages.
What levers need to be pulled in order to make this happen? Because 6 months is actually a complete failure on everybody's part, and we are feeling extreme desperation, despair.
Netanyahu says his government won't buckle to international pressure on a ceasefire without freedom for the hostages.
I made it clear to the international community there will be no ceasefire without the return of hostages. It just won't happen.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
For all those calling for ceasefire, pay attention to what Hamas just did. Israel said we're withdrawing one of our divisions. What a significant move, whether that's a tactical move to have them have a period of rest and rearming. Are they preparing for a war against Hezbollah? All of these things are playing into this decision. But in that withdrawal, you would think Hamas would say, okay, Israel's withdrawing, and that's a good sign. What do? They go into that area and start firing rockets at Israel. So all this talk about ceasefire, all this talk about innocent lives, all of this, please, can Hamas stop firing rockets? That's number one. Number two, can they release the hostages? Can they send them home? What is the strategic advantage at this point, as if there was ever one? It's a war crime to take civilians hostage. That's an absolute international war crime. I'm not hearing anybody talk about that in all of this discussion of ceasefire. So please, can Hamas, the pressure be put there and not on Israel? Israel has enough pressure going on right now. And let me add to what Netanyahu is obviously carrying the burden of all of this. His own Minister of National Security has said, if there isn't an invasion of Rafah, if Hamas isn't totally defeated, then the prime minister isn't going to have a government. The coalition will absolutely dissolve. So there's politics in the United States. There's international politics. There's all kinds of pressure coming from the UN, other groups. But please keep the very clear moral picture. Hamas started this. Hamas has hostages. Hamas continues to fire rockets at Israel. What in the world do you expect Israel to do in response? They have to stop this. That's part of their national defense. It's their right of self-preservation. They can't help but do this.